Hey everybody, we're here with Dr. Alan Keyes, and we are so pleased to have him here. We're at the Red Pill Expo, and that's G. Edward Griffin's event. And Dr. Keyes is agreed to spend a few minutes with us and kind of share what he's been up to. He's an amazing guy. He's a conservative patriot, and those of us who have followed him over the years have the highest respect and regard for him. So welcome, Dr. Keyes.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So Harvard doctoral.
Well, don't hold that against me. I've been doing my best to live it down. No, actually, I have been doing my best to apply what I learned in the right way.
Absolutely. And, you know, you're a strong and amazing conservative voice, and we need, you know, as well as I do today, we need these voices to be loud and clear because we're up against this socialist, Marxist, globalist monster that, and we see the battle is really coming to a head, don't you think?
Oh, it surely is. And I think, and I hope actually, that the 2020 election in America will turn on this question. Because I don't understand how people who are openly socialist, and that is now more or less true of the whole Democrat Party, get away with running for offices that require that they swear allegiance to the Constitution of the United States. After all, socialism in all its various forms ultimately leads to some form of dictatorship. They can call it whatever they like, but it's either going to be a despotic individual dictatorship like Stalinism and Maoism, or it's going to be a party line dictatorship like the Communist Chinese have had and other groups, or you are going to have a bureaucratic dictatorship, which is really a feature that has run through all of them in various ways, right? All these communist regimes. But one way or the other, it's dictatorship. When you go back and study the founding of the United States, what was the one thing that all of them, even when they were disagreeing about things, they all agreed that you had to pay attention to making sure the arrangements for government didn't allow dictatorship.
Exactly.
It's the whole point of the Constitution.
Getting away from King George.
That's right. They called it absolute despotism, but it basically is totalitarian dictatorship. And I remember recently watching or reading, I think it was, a fellow who was running as a democratic socialist. He was running for the city council, I think, in Chicago. And everywhere he went, he was telling people that democratic socialism requires total control of every aspect of society.
Oh, which goes against every fiber of our being.
Right. It is totally contrary. And here, the founders put together the Constitution to prevent dictatorship. That was one of the key things. Even when they disagreed, they wanted to prevent dictatorship. And yet these folks are going to take on offices, which all the civil officials in the United States have to do, in which they swear to be loyal to the Constitution of the United States. How can people who advocate dictatorship claim and be trusted when they say that they're going to work against dictatorship?
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense. And if they think it through, all of the governments and countries that have adopted socialism or Marxism, communism, it's all basically the same thing in my mind. All the countries that have adopted that, it's been an abysmal failure everywhere. And
well, so, you know, people do like to cite. One example people all give me, Sweden's a socialist country, and I beg to differ.
They're very capitalist too.
Sweden is a capitalist country in which the government then takes all the fruits of capitalism and uses it for purposes they claim are socialist. So you have a socialist facade living off of the continued success of a capitalist country. This is not socialism.
No, and it's not really pure capitalism either because it's not a level playing field. And we see a lot of that in this country too. We really don't have a level playing field. And if we had a level playing field, real capitalism would be much more successful for everybody, not just a small group of people. And it's the idea of a small group of people who want to have complete control of every aspect of our lives. That's what we're up against.
Well, if people think that this is just some kind of archaic myth that's invented by people like you and me, I would like them to consider what's going on right now with Google, Facebook, Twitter, all of these folks. We allowed them to get what essentially is the establishment of an exclusive monopoly, and they are now abusing that power, not just to make money, they made billions by exploiting the people who came onto their platforms who then gathered audiences. And because they were able to gather information and other kinds of things from these audiences, as well as advertising revenues, they made a lot of money, which they, by the way, didn't share. This is a kind of production where the theater owner gets to keep all the money, right? So everything that's made stays in their pockets, builds up their power. And to add insult to injury, they have now launched an attack on the body politic, the sovereign body of the people of the United States as a whole, saying that we don't get access to sources of information. We don't get to have conversations. We don't get to provide information to each other on their platforms. It's as if people at Marriott should decide that you can't have a red pill conference because we don't agree with your stuff. We know that that viewpoint discrimination is against the laws. And it violates the Constitution. But it proves that they want to be tyrants. That's their goal in life.
Oh, absolutely. And we see the social and cultural programming that's going on in these platforms. And of course, they're shadow banning and outright banning conservative people and conservative points of view and conservative thought on these platforms. It's so obvious that they have drawn the line in the sand and saying, we want to have complete and utter control. And they really do to a large degree. But there is a great awakening taking place. And that's what's exciting now, and that's what we want people to share this information, because there is an awakening, and it's our time to take back our country, to stand up for the Constitution, stand up as sovereign beings in this world for what is right with a moral compass. And this is what we've gotten away from, and we've allowed these people to sort of the boiling frog thing, where they slowly work their way into every system. But now it's all coming out. We're seeing all the stuff that they've been up to, and now it's our time to expose this and shine the light on them.
Well, and I think that the people have been hungry for this, and they're finally taking advantage of an opportunity they themselves created by electing Donald Trump. And by listening to the fact that he was speaking to things that were supposedly the things that the Republicans were addressing. But people started to notice that every time they voted in the Republican leadership in their program, they talked a good game, but they never followed through.
Same old.
And we got the same results.
Yeah.
And I think they turned to somebody like Donald Trump in the hope that we're going to see some results. He has stood firm on a number of things, taken a lot of hits, for instance, for taking a strong stand to restore the integrity of our borders, a strong stand to restore the balance in our trade with other countries. Now, I admit, after World War II, we took a role in rebuilding countries in Europe and around the world. We took a role in helping developing countries and so forth. But you got to a point toward the end of the last century when it was quite clear that everybody was back on their feet in terms of the major economies. They were prime competitors for the United States. Countries like China were coming along even despite their opposition. They were benefiting from their relations economically with the United States. And more, we were being treated unfairly. Our farmers not being allowed access to markets, our products being barred from markets, and things of this kind. He has worked to address that imbalance, which I think is fairness. We did a good work for the world, but we shouldn't have to pay a price in terms of our own continued prosperity when we need now to be able to share the fruits of our ingenuity and our economy with other countries on a fair basis so that our products will get a fair shake in their markets. And that's what he's insisting on, and he's done it with, I think, both courage and shrewdness coming from his business acumen, which is very important. And he's also stood for the vitally important moral foundations of the country. He stood for life. And he has taken a strong stand in favor of standing against what has been the usurpation by the courts of authority they can't be allowed to have. They don't have the authority to take over the policies of the executive branch. They don't have the authority to change the meaning of the Constitution to suit their ideological whims.
But we've seen that happen.
And it's happened over and over again, but I think that Donald Trump represents an opportunity to stop it. But we need to inform ourselves. We need to get back in touch with the real roots, which a lot of people aren't aware of because over the course of the last 20 and 30 years, our educational institutions have been in the hands of folks who are systematically neglecting to talk about and share instruction on the real foundations in thought and in faith of the American way of life. And one of the things I do at IMTV, that's iamtv.us, is to try to reestablish the connection with the founding premises in the Declaration and the Constitution, and also with what I think is the premise of faith on which the United States was founded. Because in the end, you can't have God-endowed unalienable rights that are basically a recognition of the fact that you have joined with others in an effort to do what's right according to the endowment of God's will. You've made that choice for right, and you now stand together to defend it and establish a government that is supposed to respect and pursue it. You can't do that if there is no respect for God, no reverence for God, no thought for God. So at the end of the day, the Constitution, the Declaration, and the faith of the American people stand on a ground that requires the affirmation of God's authority. And I try to show that in the way that I approach all the different issues have in politics. And I think we need to remember it vitally now, because the key aim of everything that's going on is to separate us from that premise of God. Because they know that once God is gone, we are standing alone in the face of their amassed power, and they will no longer face people who are confident that that power legitimately, lawfully must be constrained by respect for our God-endowed rights. That's what has made us a stronger people.
That's right. And the power needs to come back to the people, because they have slowly taken away our power and our ability to exert our will and to have that strong moral compass that you're talking about.
See, I think, though, that one of the things I try to get people to see is that that which is of God can't be taken away from you. You have to give that away.
Yeah,
And I
we
think,
have.
sadly, the blandishments of money, power, entertainment, pleasure, all these things that they say, oh, go ahead, do it, whatever you feel like being, whatever you say you are, and all these lies that they're telling to degrade our common sense, to degrade our intelligence, to degrade our sense of dignity and worth. These are aimed at undermining our sense of the relationship and reverence with God. Because at the end of the day, when you get all self-indulgent and decide that you're just going to do what you feel like, and you extend that feeling to killing other human beings who get in your way, you're going to start feeling somewhere in yourself unworthy, guilty, and ashamed. And that's going to translate, whether you admit it or not, into a sense that you haven't the ability to govern yourself. You've lost your discipline, and therefore you need to look to government power in order to replace your insufficient self-control. They're trying to induce us to surrender.
Absolutely.
Because we no longer feel that we have the character required to sustain our liberty.
They actually, that is the exact premise that they're putting out there, that we don't have the ability to govern ourselves, that these people are smarter and more capable, so therefore they must be given all the power over us, and that's a huge lie. It's a huge lie.
Well, sadly, it's a huge lie that they got away with for thousands of years. As every government on earth until the United States was founded, practically, the only ones that lasted for any time were based on that premise. The few rule over the many, who are incapable of ruling over themselves and therefore need our guidance. And the truth is, the American people came along, and what happened? You turned things over to a people that had some character, that had some reverence for God, and they produced a result that is the greatest nation, materially and otherwise, in the history of mankind. And I think two things are true. They want to destroy it because it gets in the way of the ambition of these elitist, self-worshiping.
And the globalist concept of fitting in.
And here's something Americans don't realize. I think that once they have usurped the power, one of the things that they've already started doing, they're going to erase every trace of the history of the United States. They don't want the human race to remember that when people on the right basis claimed their authority to govern themselves according to God's understanding, the result was the most successful nation ever. They're going to try to pretend that such a nation never existed. We've got to stop them.
We will, absolutely. And that's why events like this Red Pill Expo are so important, and your new show is very important. And can you tell us where we can find your new show? How can we watch it?
You can watch it at IMTV. That's IAM. That actually stands for Independent American Media.
Nice.
IMTV. It also, by the way, for those who
Is that .com?
drift. I am, what was that? That was the name God gave to Moses for himself. IamTV.us.
.us.
.us. And we'll have the site. You can also sign up to follow the programming and get notices of when new shows come out and things like that. And you can also see the interviews we do with various and assorted figures in and outside of government, politics, in all different walks of life, because I try to reassert everywhere I can the point that at the end of the day, there's nothing that we do as human beings that needs not to be done in terms of our reverence for and remembrance that we are, at the end of the day, creatures of God subject to his benevolent will. And when we follow the path that he lays out, we go from strength to strength. When we abandon him, we teeter on the precipice of self-destruction, which is where our nation is at the moment. But we can, being recalled to our God, save ourselves.
I agree. And I think we're at a strong crossroads here, and we are seeing a lot more people take responsibility. And that's really one of the keys, is personal responsibility. We, as citizens of this great nation, have to understand what our rights are and then stand up for them and hold these, politicians who are mostly bought and paid for by corporations and banks. We have to hold them responsible, and we have to hold them to their promise of upholding the Constitution, which, as you so brilliantly pointed out, they have all gone completely against, because you can't serve both. You can't serve the people in the Constitution and serve what they're trying to do, which is create this globalist monster and kind of squash down the United States to a third world level so that we fit in with the rest of their globalist agenda. And I'm so glad that there are people like you out there that are talking about this. People who have a strong voice and a strong moral compass are telling the American people and reminding them this is what we have to do.
Well, I'm so glad that you're willing to let the voice be heard and to add your strong voice to that process, because I think at the end of the day, the key, people of goodwill working together founded this country. And at first, they were, as someone reminded us today, they were just a little percentage of the population. But I think at the end of the day, truth has power. And the results of truth especially can draw folks to stand and walk together on the ground of justice and right that is conscious of God's goodwill. And that's what we're talking about. And I think that's been the success of America and will be again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Keys. Appreciate your time. Keep doing your great work.
Good to be here.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for us. We'll see you next time on Inside the Matrix.